it? Is that the fact you disagreed, the other two disagreed with your determinations regarding Exhibit 11 and Exhibit 14, isn't that correct?
I can't see that ballot, so I don't know.
Well, would you agree that they disagreed with some of your determinations yesterday?
There was one in disagreement.
Okay. And if somebody testified there was more than one, would they be telling the truth?
That there was more than one?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. In fact, there were they also made determinations that you disagreed with concerning ballots that should have been counted for Chris Mays, correct?
Just so you know.
I agreed that it should have gone to adjudication.
But you disagreed with what the adjudication results should have been, correct?
It was not adjudicated, so I did not agree with that. That's correct.
So my question is simple, Ms. Grande, isn't it true that the other two members of this panel disagreed with several of your conclusions regarding whether votes should have been counted yesterday?
Not several I won't agree with.
Okay. I don't have any further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Anything else? And unless somebody else jumps in, I'm going to go back to Mr. Lasota at this point. Mr. Lasota, any further questions for Ms. Grande?
No, I don't have anything, Your Honor. Thank you, Ms. Grande.
Andy, thank you for testifying. Mr. Lasota, call your next witness.
We don't have any other witnesses, Your Honor.
All right. Who wants to go first on the other side? Mr. LaRue?
Very tasty.
Yes, Your Honor. Maricopa County will call Scott Jarrett.
All right, we're going to find Scott Jarrett. Get him up on video Zoom.
Let's see what lies he's going to tell today.
He's in the room. Your Honor, he's in the room with us. He's in the room. He's coming right now.
I hate this format.
Okay.
You never know who's
All right, and with you getting up, Mr. LaRue, I assume Ms. Krieger is going to be doing the questioning?
who's plaintiff.
That's
Correct, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, so Ms. Krieger, you're calling
One of
Scott
the guys
Jarrett.
I
Mr. Jarrett,
recognize,
please raise your right hand. The clerk's going to swear you in.
He was on the Kerry Lake.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony which you shall give in the cause now pending shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, under penalty of perjury, so help you God?
I do.
All right, you can be seated. Go ahead.
Off. Those are my pronouns.
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please state your name
I'm Robert Scott Jarrett.
and where do you currently work?
I work for the Maricopa County Elections Department.
And what is your current position?
I am the co-elections director, and I oversee all in-person voting operations. That includes early in-person voting, which report up to the Maricopa County Recorder, as well as election day in-person voting operations, which report up to the Maricopa County Board of
I don't
Supervisors,
see him.
as well as I oversee all tabulation functions.
And how long have you held this position?
So I was appointed by the Board of Supervisors in June of 2019.
Just briefly describe what your job duties are in this position.
So I oversee all in-person voting operations. So that includes the recruitment and training of all of our poll workers, also the recruitment
Oh, there he is.
of all of our temporary workers that work at McTech.
There's the liar.
I also oversee all of our warehouse functions, oversee the
That guy was
tabulation
horrible
function as
yesterday.
well, which would
The
include
Kerry Lake
hiring
trial, he
of the
pretty much
temporary
said
staff
everything
to work
was.
in tabulation, as well as the
was
training
terrible.
that
It was
occurs
terrible.
for our temporary staff, which would include our duplication and our adjudication boards.
And what did you do before you were the director of the co-director of elections?
So I was with Maricopa County in their internal audit department for over 13 years as a professional auditor. I also spent some time at the Maricopa County Community College Districts as an internal auditor.
Thank you. So I just want to briefly have you go over election day voting in Maricopa County.
Horrible.
So as an initial matter, what are vote centers?
So a vote center in Maricopa County has used these since the 2020 cycle is it's different than the precinct-based voting model is where it allows a voter to vote at any one of our voting locations. So in 2022, Maricopa County offered 223 vote centers for the general election. That was an increase of over 13 vote centers from the 2022 August primary, as well as was an increase from the 2020 general election, which saw had 175 votes.
Thanks. So if you could just walk me through when a person comes to a vote center, the
was
process for them to cast their
That was
ballot.
good.
Yeah, so first, they will arrive at a voting location. We have what we call a site book, but that's in state statutes, that's referenced as an e-poll book. It's essentially our check-in station. So that's
Spider-Man cup
going
again.
to allow the voter to proceed and check in themselves
Spider-Man.
up until a certain point, confirming their name, their address, that type of information. And then once they get to a certain point, then it will ask that voter that they need to prove identity. So then it will stop, will not let them.
Yeah, this guy
proceed
was
further.
terrible yesterday.
One of our poll workers will then go and check that voter's identity.
Ms. Krieger, can we move the microphone a little closer to the witness, wherever your microphone is? There's some breakup, and we'd like to get every word. A court reporter is struggling to get every word.
Just speak louder. We can't get it any closer.
Your Honor, I'll try to speak louder. Can you hear me better? If I'm
Yeah,
just
face in
speaking
this
louder?
direction. That does sound better, so please do that.
I've never seen this before, like just sitting at a conference table.
So I
Under
believe
oath. I mean,
that you were talking
I've
about
seen
the
it like
check-in
in some
process.
divorce
Yes,
proceedings.
so the check-in process, so after a voter
Never
then
something like
would show
this.
identity,
This is crazy.
then it will let them proceed
Why aren't they in a
through the
courtroom?
check-in process and have their ballot printed. So in Maricopa County, we have over 12,000 different ballot styles. And so we use ballot on demand technology to be able
Right,
to
but we like to
produce
print
those
them on-
ballot styles and get that voter their correct ballot.
Print
So then that
19-inch.
ballot would then be printed at one of our ballot on demand printers along with a control slip that identifies that voter to the ballot style.
paper.
Then that voter would be issued that ballot
That way
style.
we
They
can
would
just
then
tell you to
go
drop
to
it
a
in drawer
voting
3
booth,
and then we don't have to really
to be able
find
to
out how
complete
many
that
are in
ballot,
drawer
and
3.
then they could then.
And then
on
we'll
election
commingle them
day,
with
they can
other
then
ballots.
put that into one of our on-site
Completely
precinct-based
breaking
tabulators.
the election manual.
So
And completely,
when a
ruining
voter
chain of custody,
puts
but
their ballot
okay.
into a precinct-based tabulator.
It was an
vote center in
accident.
Maricopa County.
So
Explain sort of the scenarios that might occur when that happens.
So when they go to insert their ballot into a tabulator, it could be read by that tabulator. Now, there could be instances where a voter may overvote a contest, right? So an overvote would be if we have a contest that is a vote for one, and the voter fills in 2 ovals. So then it would alert that voter that that contest has been overvoted, the specific contest. And if there's multiple, it'll list all those contests, alerting them that they had overvoted the contest. If they had left a ballot completely blank, so no voted contests on the ballot were blank, it would also alert the voter that that's a completely blank contest and allow them to then return that ballot to themselves. And then at that point in time, the voter has a decision to make. Are they going to cast that ballot as a completely blank ballot, or are they going to refill in those ovals, spoil that ballot, get a new ballot issued? Another scenario would be if there's an ambiguous mark on the ballot. So an ambiguous mark is when the mark is not completed more than 35%. So sometimes that would be a check mark or an X with a very thin writing utensil. So then the precinct-based tabulator would alert the voter that there are ambiguous marks on the ballot. It does not alert the voter to which contest, because it does that, there's no opportunity for the voter to be able to resolve that. So then the only options for that voter at that point in time are to either put those ballots with those ambiguous marks into door number 3, our secure ballot drop box in Maricopa County, or to spoil that ballot, get a new ballot reissued, so then they can complete it without the use of check marks. So they're filling in that oval, so it can be inserted into the tabulator.
So in those situations on
Jesus.
election day, when
So
a
many
voter
so many
is,
things that could go wrong.
placing their ballot into the tabulator and they're alerted to one of these issues with their ballot, the voter, what's the option for the voter? What decision do they have to make at that point?
So the tabulator is alerting the voter to if there's one of those issues occurring. So then the voter has the option to return that ballot to them and to inspect it. And then it is their choice to decide how to proceed. So it's whether they want to reinsert it into the tabulator and have the tabulator accept it as is for those overvoted or are completely
The
blank
ballot's not going to
contests,
work
or
when you
with
have
ambiguous
someone
marks
that
dropping
changes
door
the
number.
size of the
It's
ballot
completely the voter's choice at that
and
point
puts
in
it
time.
on the
So
right paper,
when
but the wrong
voter
size
makes that
print.
decision,
It won't work.
are they, showing, I guess, what their
That's
intent
why
is with respect
They
to
had
that
everyone
ballot?
put it in
To
drawer
vote the
number
ballot
3,
as is, or to make a change?
and then they
Yes,
could
that's correct. That's
not
the
tell
voter
people
has
how
made
many
their
ballots
decision
were
on
actually
what
in
the
drawer 3,
intent is for those
commingle
specific
them with
situations.
other ballots, and say, oops, it
And
was just a
quickly,
processing
why
error.
is it that voters
Just a
have, or
processing
the
error, no big
recommendation
deal.
from Maricopa County is for voters to
No big
use
deal.
blue or black
We don't need to
pens?
know the exact amount.
So
Who cares?
the reason we make
We
that
already
specific
selected the person
recommendation
that
is
we
we
want.
don't want voters to use red ink or yellow highlighters, because on red, our tabulators are specifically
Why are
programmed
highlighters
not to
even
read
out
red
for
ink.
people
And the
to
reason we do
use?
that is in all of our processes, that's what we hire our
Give
temporary
them
workers to use.
a
So then
black
they could not
ballpoint
inadvertently
pen.
make a mark on a ballot that then could end up causing a stray mark that would then be read by the tabulator. So we use red ink throughout the
The
entire
people who vote
process. So we alert voters
on the day of the
to use
election are not
either black
idiots.
or blue ink. And either
We
of
know
those
how to
colors
fill
of
in
inks
ballots
are fine. And can
because
read just fine on our tabulation
we
equipment.
Thank you.
do
So I
something
want to talk
called
about electronic adjudication board.
research.
Can you explain
We
the
know
role of
things.
an electronic?
We think we're idiots, but
board
we're
at
not.
Maricopa County?
So the role of the electronic adjudication board is actually established in the state law, so Title 16, as well as the elections procedures manual. So they must be
Two
a
things that you
bipartisan
continually
team or a
break.
board made up or comprised of 2 judges. They have to be from the 2 largest parties, that's a Republican and Democrat. And then there's also an inspector that is part of the board. Now, the state law does not require them to be of any particular party. Maricopa County, we
What about
only
the
hire
people
an
at Run
inspector
Back?
that is registered as an independent or a libertarian to keep that fairness of the
How
bipartisan
come
team.
the ballot boxes, when they
So
were
their
inspected,
role
were
is
not
to
secured with the
review
right kind of
ballots
tape?
that need to go, that a tabulator cannot determine the intent. So a lot of times those are those overvotes. So every single overvote that's registered on a ballot that comes through central count. So those early ballots will go to an adjudication board. Again, a completely blank ballot would also go to a adjudication board. But one of the more common, and especially for the 2022 election, that went to an adjudication board was write-ins. So none of our tabulation equipment can read handwriting. So if there is a vote for a write-in, and then there's a write-in contest, in a contest that has a qualified write-in, that would go to an electronic adjudication board to review, determine, was that a vote for a qualified write-in or a non-qualified write-in?
And how many members are there on an adjudication board?
So there's a total of 3. There's 2 judges and the inspector.
And what's the criteria for the makeup of an adjudication board?
So it has to be.
You must be funded by Soros
Of both different
and Mitch
parties.
McConnell and
For
the
this past
Uniparty
election, we had 22
and the
adjudication
UN.
boards working at a single point in time, but we did run 2 shifts, so we had hired just over 90 adjudication boards. We would transition those same adjudication boards to another process that we call duplication. And they perform both of those functions
Please
within
like
our
and
central
subscribe.
count
I
facility.
appreciate it.
And all of this, we call that our
Like
ballot
and
tabulation
subscribe. It
center,
doesn't cost you
or the
anything.
BTC. All of
All you
that
gotta do
is
is just push the
under
button.
observation from
And it is
under
done forever.
24/7 live
Forever.
streaming cameras, as well as every time that we're performing any adjudication action, duplication action, or tabulation, the political party observers were present observing as well.
And
What
do
about
the members of the
when
adjudication
the
board
windows were
receive
taped up
training?
again and nobody could see
Yes,
it?
we provide them training on test ballots and test decks. So we have a famous names ballot that will be 2 different sites. And we go through all the different scenarios that a adjudication board may
What's the
receive. And a lot of
scenario?
those are
Here
come
we go,
through the
yo.
Secretary of
Here we
State's
go, yo.
voter intent
What's
guidelines,
the
comes through our
scenario?
training. And then
Bo
prior
knows this
scenarios
what,
that
and
we've
Bo knows that
encountered
what, but Bo don't know
where
jack.
boards
'Cause
have
Bo can't rap,
questions
so what?
about how the adjudication process happens. So that's a full day of training that we provide to them before they begin the electronic adjudication
1 day of
process.
training for an
I will-
election.
do want to point out too, as they go through and perform the electronic adjudication process, they are creating a handwritten log of every action that they are taking. And that at
Let's
the
see
end
the
of
log.
every
Where is
shift,
it at?
we print out a system generated log of every action that they took. At the end of that shift, so
Let's
before
see
their
the
lunch shift,
log.
before their afternoon shift, they're reviewing those logs, comparing those logs and making sure that they match before we would then transmit or process any of those ballots would be
We're not going to
moved
take
into
this
the results
trial
tallying
seriously, so
reporting
y'all
system.
can just sit in the conference room.
So,
Use a
and I
conferencing table.
apologize,
It's
Your Honor,
okay.
what
You can take
I'd
your
like
shoes
to
off. You're
talk
not
about
walking
some
anywhere.
exhibits.
Let your dogs
It was
breathe.
marked as Defendants Exhibit 8, which is the Electronic Adjudication Board procedure, but I'm not sure, do we know which number that is now?
Way to be prepared,
Is it
lady.
defendant Mays or defendant Hobbs exhibit? That's only one defendant exhibit.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I
Thank
believe
you.
it's Exhibit 16 now.
Oh, wait. Exhibit 8 is the adjudication quick reference guide, and Exhibit 9.
How do you not know?
Adjudication board procedures.
How are you not prepared?
Okay, let's.
I'll tell you
let's
why,
start with,
because they're not taking it
The
seriously.
Electronic Adjudication Board procedure.
Because they
which
think
is
the
Exhibit
fix is
16.
in.
It's Exhibit 16, my
Doesn't
apologies.
matter what the other side
Can
says.
you share
We
that
got
with
this shit.
everybody, or can we share it with everybody?
Judge isn't gonna rule. Anyways,
Is that
judge is on the payroll too.
Go ahead.
Ms. Hartman Tellis.
I don't know that. That's what they're
Is
thinking.
gonna share her screen for this.
I can read their minds.
Say it again. These are not sealed. No.
Oh,
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Scott,
let's
do you
read the procedures
recognize this
manual that
document?
Yes,
y'all
I do.
don't
It's
follow.
our,
You don't follow
procedures
it.
that we've developed in-house here at Maricopa County to guide electronic adjudication boards through the process and the role that they play in performing electronic adjudication.
Yeah, let's see this.
And,
Attend electronic
well, actually,
adjudication.
Your Honor, I'd like to move this into evidence, please.
Any objection, Mr. Lasota?
Sign attendance law.
No, Your Honor.
Order admitting
Participate
Exhibit 16
as a
into
member of a
evidence.
bipartisan adjudication board as assigned by the Maricopa
Thank
County
you.
ballot.
And I'd like
Have
to move
Lichtenstein
on then
adjudication
to
manager,
exhibit
boards, 2 judges and an
17.
inspector. Judges' roles as Democrat and Republican, their roles.
I'm sorry,
in electronic
adjudication quick reference guide.
workstation
It's 15.
to
Okay,
adjudicate
exhibit
each
15.
contest. Ooh, overvote, like they did in
Right,
Pennsylvania
you have that on the
a
screen
couple years
now.
ago, where they had more
Thank you.
more votes than
Scott, do you
voters.
recognize this
But
document?
there was
Yes, I
no,
do.
there was
This
nothing
is a
wrong with that.
document that was
No, there was nothing
produced
wrong with that.
Through the, by
More votes
Maricopa
than
County
voters.
to align with the Secretary of State's voter intent guidelines. So, and it provides lots of different scenarios of what an adjudication board might see as they're making voter intent determinations.
And I'd like to go
Quick
over this
reference
one in
guide.
a little bit more detail.
Makes
So
sense.
Scott, if you could just explain sort of these scenarios that are here. So the first one is the vote for 1 or vote for 2 scenario. What is this telling the workers?
Now, in all
So
honesty,
the
I really
vote
have
for
no
one
idea what
So it's set here,
what
we're
charges
describing
this
situations where they're
case
not
are
going to take
being
an
looked at. I
action.
knew what it was with
So that's
Carrie
why
Lake
there's
case.
that little circle with the cross.
I don't know what it is with Abe Hamadeh. I don't know if it's the same thing or.
The electronic adjudication board, they leave these as they are within the system. So there's no need for them to take an action. So here we see for that vote for 1, clerk and the recorder, there's a oval completed for Deborah A. Johnson. So that would then mean that that is being registered. So we have a green highlight there. So when the
I like these
electronic
notes.
adjudication boards are performing their role, the system provides an overlay to inform the board of how the system's interpreting the mark, right? So here there's a green mark, it's overlaying on that oval, saying this is being counted as a vote. It's a vote for 1, so there's no action the electronic adjudication board needs to take. Same for the vote for 2. Here's a contest that has 2, more than 2 candidates on the ballot,
Wow.
but there's
Reading a story
the
on
voter can
truth.
make 2 choices.
The
or
police
2
arrested a
selections.
woman for
So there's
praying
2
across the
ovals
street
filled
from
in.
an abortion
Again, so
clinic
there's
in
no
Great
need
Britain.
for the adjudication board to make an action.
Okay.
Now, in our country,
then
you
let's
can't
move
be
over
like
to
on the
the
same side of
overvote
the street and
scenario. What is
protesting and
that,
blocking the entrance.
explaining to the adjudication board?
That's a law
So
where the
here-
FBI will
Mayor,
come to
I'm
your
going to
house
object on
with like
relevance
10 people
grounds. I
and
think we're
guns
getting
drawn just
far
to arrest
afield,
you.
and I think
Yes.
it's your job
That happened to a
to
pastor near
decide,
Philadelphia.
decipher voter intent. Ultimately, I think the training that was received is, I think we'd
You
all
should look
agree
into that
there's
story.
significant
It's a
training that
horrific
goes
story.
on, but I think the question is, did they get it right?
Got into an
And I
altercation
don't think
because somebody was
this is
messing
relevant to
with his
that.
son in front of the abortion clinic that they were
Uh,
protesting in front of.
Sure, Ms.
The
Geiger, go
judge in
ahead.
Pennsylvania threw it out.
The,
However, the
my understanding of the position
DOJ
is
for the
that,
country, Merrick
had
Garland's,
these
sent the
votes been
FBI to the
adjudicated,
guy's
they
house
would
to
have
arrest him
been
in front of his
determined
family,
differently.
guns
And I think
drawn,
the training
like a
that
dozen
is
officers,
received and
to arrest
the
him for
way that
pushing someone in front of an
adjudication boards
abortion
are
clinic.
trained across the state so that there's consistency is
That's our
relevant to the
judicial system
analysis
and
of
the police state
how
that we're living in right
these,
now.
ballots would have been adjudicated with an adjudication board.
Yeah, and I understand that. Mr. Lasota, do you object to the admission of these exhibits as they relate to what I have to refer to?
Your Honor, I don't object to a small number of exhibits just for background purposes, but I think it's up to you to decide voter intent on the ballots we've offered, and whatever one's training was. I think if you believe they got it wrong, the fact that they were well trained is not relevant.
Your Honor,
What?
just briefly, Mr. Lasota is accusing these election workers of misconduct,
Yes,
okay?
they might have.
This is certainly relevant to whether they engaged in misconduct.
Your Honor, we're accusing them of simply not counting the ballot the right way. I mean, if you want to call that an accusation, go ahead.
Well, I guess then you should be dismissing your misconduct claim, shouldn't you?
Mr. Barr, arguing doesn't help anything.
Just trying to speed it along, Your Honor. I'm sorry.
These
Right,
attorneys, because you think the fix is in. These attorneys are so.
The objection is
Bullshit.
whether or not we're going to spend the next however long going through this document in detail. I guess, Ms. Krieger, I would ask you to speed it along. I do get that there's been training, and if you could just talk about that, what your election officials go through without.
Boy,
we
9-year-old
don't have to go
boy
into
in
detail
Ontario,
about
9
what
years
this
old,
quick reference
9-year-old
guide
boy
means, in my opinion. So
suffered a
I
blood
guess I'm
clot in his
partially
brain and
sustaining
died
the
suddenly.
objection and
Wow.
partially overruling
That's
it.
terrible.
I think you have a right to present evidence that your people that did this do get training.
before
And I
Christmas
think that
and New
is
Year's.
being done through the admission of these documents, and any anything else you want to tell me about what process the trainers go through. But some of the details are not as crucial. So go ahead.
Well, thank you, Your Honor. I do want to go over, although we have not heard from the plaintiff as to what their position is on any specific ballot or what the basis for their belief that it should have been tabulated differently. I'm trying to address, their perhaps misinformation based on the fact that they haven't been trained on how to do adjudication. So
Always using
I'm
those
guessing
gaslighting
right
words.
now on what their basis is.
Well, you only have 6 ballots to look at, and they're pretty easy to guess on from
Only
my
6?
perspective of what their argument is on those 6 ballots.
Out of hundreds of
So
thousands,
let's
we're only
move
going to let you look
along.
at 6. What
As
the fuck is
you know,
wrong?
again, we're going to be way ahead of what I thought, but I just don't think we need to get firmly entrenched in going over every training session that everybody went through. But you've seen those 6 ballots, and there's check marks on 3 of them and an X on 1 of them, and whether or not they're trained to record those is an issue, I guess. So
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
go ahead.
So when there is an ambiguous mark on a ballot, what is the training and how do boards look at that question?
So they look to determine, and can they together determine whether they can determine a voter's intent. So sometimes it may be clear because and they're consistently filling in every single oval or on the ballot the same way. So if that's the case, then those boards can then make that voter intent. Other times they're inconsistently maybe marking a ballot. So then their training is if the ballot's being marked inconsistently throughout, then it's much more difficult than to truly.
Do you
make
understand
a-
that they're trying to make it seem
determine the
like the people
intent of
that
the voter?
voted
So
the day
then,
of the
but
election,
it
that they're a
is
bunch of
that
idiots?
board's assignment. We provide them
We're not
training.
idiots
If
that
those
vote
boards
on
take an
election
oath
day.
in
We know how to
office,
fucking fill in
they
a
make
ballot.
the determinations of if they can determine voter intent. If there's they don't agree between the two judges, then that's when the inspector comes in, and then sometimes they will break the tie. Usually that's very, very, very rare when those types of things have to occur.
Your Honor, I'd like to move Exhibit 15 into evidence, please.
Any objection to 15, Mr. Lasota?
No objection, Your Honor.
It is ordered
As
admitting
previously
15.
stated.
It is ordered
French
admitting
for
Exhibit
the soda.
15. Next, Ms. Geiger, go ahead.
Like
thank
the
you, Your
Royale
Honor.
with cheese.
I believe there was one additional exhibit added by the Secretary of State's office, which was the Secretary of State's voter intent guide. I'll get you an exhibit number in a moment.
Let me see what that is.
It's C1. That's exhibit C1.
All right, go ahead.
Scott, do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do.
And what is it?
So this is guidelines that the Secretary of State issued to all counties if they were going to be implementing electronic adjudication. So when the Secretary of State was first initially drafting this document, they sent drafts to all the counties for input because we have lots of expertise in performing adjudication, whether that was electronically or when we were duplicating a ballot. Maricopa County was one of the first counties to adopt electronic adjudication. So we had we played a role, and my team played a role in providing feedback to the Secretary of State on ways that they could improve the document that would serve voters and our electronic adjudication board as well.
And is Maricopa County's training and processes with respect to adjudication consistent with what's contained in this guide?
Yes, they are. Our guidance that we issue, as well as
The one-day training
we
they go
follow
through.
this to have consistency throughout the entire state.
Thank you. Your Honor, I'd like to move Exhibit C1 into evidence, please.
Any objection to C1?
The
No,
one-day
Your Honor.
training that the
All
people
right,
go
it is
through
ordered
for
admitting
one of the
Exhibit
most important
C1 into
things
evidence.
that we have
Thank
in
you,
America,
Your
which is
Honor.
voting.
So, Scott, are you aware that a ballot inspection took place here at McTech yesterday?
Yes, and that's the Maricopa County Tabulation and Election Center, our acronym MCTEC, yes.
And were you present for that inspection?
I was present partially. I was in court providing testimony in another case for the morning, but in the afternoon and the evening, I was here observing that inspection.
And are you aware that some of the parties involved in that inspection flagged certain ballots?
Yes, I am aware of that.
And have you looked at all of those ballots?
Yes, yesterday evening after the parties left, and we actually made it clear that I would be going through and reviewing each of the 14 ballots that they had wanted to be submitted as exhibits.
And there are, I believe, 6, is it, that have been, or 7 flagged by Mr. Hamadeh. Is that your understanding?
My understanding was 6.
6, maybe you're right, sorry about that.
6 ballots that were flagged by the plaintiffs,
Mhm.
and then the defendants had flagged 8 ballots.
And did you review those 6 that have been flagged by the plaintiff in this case?
Yes, I have.
And what was your analysis with respect to those ballots?
So based off the procedures that Maricopa County has identified, that those should not have been sent to an adjudication board to be adjudicated, only to be sent to an adjudication board to be reviewed for write-ins. Because they are election day ballots, well, sorry, not all of the 6, I believe 4 of the 6, that was the situation. There was 2 that ballots that went to a adjudication board to be reviewed because those were door ballots that were inserted into that door number 3, our secure ballot box, and brought back to the elections department. Because those ballots were inserted into that door number 3, that voter did not have the opportunity to review that ballot getting and notified by the precinct-based tabulator
Drawer
that,
3.
there may be a
Again,
voter intent issue.
Drawer 3.
So in those 2 instances, those ballots were then sent to a electronic adjudication board to be reviewed.
How can they get a
further.
sample out of only 14
And
ballots?
so with respect to those
Hundreds
6
of thousands of
ballots,
ballots. cast that
did
day.
you believe that they were tabulated correctly?
Based off the process that when we don't send a ballot that is from
So his
election
answer is
day
no,
and
by the
a
way.
voter
That's why
had an
he's
opportunity
filibustering.
to tell us their intent and not sending those to an adjudication board, yes.
And well, I think
that's it.
that, can we take just a brief break, Your Honor, quickly?
No.
How long, Mr.?
Why do you need a break?
I think, Your Honor, that Ms. Dool has some questions for Mr. Jarrett as well.
So are you done asking questions? I don't want to, I don't mind Ms. Dool taking over and asking questions, but I just want
Yes,
to.
I'm finished, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Dool, go ahead.
Your Honor, this is Mr. Gaona actually speaking. I just wanted to clarify one thing that Mr. Jarrett was talking about there, and I'm not sure that this was clear from the record, which is, Mr. Jarrett, you reviewed all, I believe you said it was
Can't testify for
14
him.
ballots that
What
were
the-
flagged by
Shut this down, Judge.
either side in this case for further review and that are now in evidence before the court. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And based on your review of those 14 ballots, what is your position about the swing one way or another in terms of how those ballots should or should not have been adjudicated? And I'm asking that question in the sense of how the count would actually change based on those 14 ballots now that you've looked at them again.
So based off the total of the 14 ballots, based on the procedures that Maricopa County has set forth, that's as I understand your question, I determined that there were 3 errors on those ballots that should have been adjudicated differently. And those 3 errors all were in favor of the candidate Mays.
Okay.
Or would have added 3 more votes to the candidate Mays.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
All right, so that was Ms. Dool's question. All right, so Mr. Lasota, any
She
cross
doesn't
of the
go by
witness?
Miss, buddy. She goes by she and
Yes,
her.
Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor. So, Mr. Jarrett, let's start with the 3 errors. Which, and I don't think we have exhibit numbers for the
course
ones
not.
offered
Why would
by
they
the
be an
other
exhibit
parties, but
number?
let's start with the
For
last
evidence.
6 digits. Which ones do you think were erroneous? And can you go through one by one what the original count was and what you think the count should have been?
Yes, I can. So the first was a 700906 underscore 03. So 70009 underscore 06 003.
Which one of the 12,000 ballot styles is this?
And this was a
You heard me correct. Arizona has 12,000 different ballot styles.
ballot.
It's exhibit 13, you can't put it on the screen, but
Why is it not everybody in the same courtroom? What the fuck is this?
Exhibit 13.
yes.
It's terrible.
Yeah, believe it's exhibit 13. If that's 70009 underscore 6 underscore 03. Yes.
Yeah, it is exhibit 13 on our case lines. It has been admitted.
So in this document, you can see that there is a consistent voting pattern for ovals. Here there are check marks or dashes that are being filled in.
I don't believe that that was
So,
filled
and in this instance,
by an actual voter.
this was on, if you scroll, Your Honor, through the document to the next pages, you can see how this was read by, zoom in. Every ballot is affixed with an audit mark. It says how it was read by the tabulator. And then there's a new audit mark that's affixed that as it was adjudicated by the electronic adjudication board. And in this situation, the ballot was not adjudicated to award a vote for the candidate Mays. So this is an election day ballot that was actually inserted into that door number 3 that went before adjudication board. Those adjudication boards were supposed
Drawer
to
three
be making
again,
and a voter intent determination.
where they have no idea how many
They
ballots are
made
in drawer 3,
and awarded
and those ballots were commingled with other
contests
ballots.
on this ballot.
so
for
nobody knows
some
how
of
many
the
were actually
candidates that
submitted.
Have those check marks. In this instance,
But we're just going to give you
left it
14
as
ballots to look at.
a undervoted
14.
contest, not a voted contest.
Out of
So they did not
Attorney
million
generate
votes.
this mark.
Yeah,
what
I've
kind of
got that.
bullshit is that?
For the Attorney General race. Is that,
That's correct, for the Attorney General's contest.
Bullshit.
okay.
That's what it is.
So that went from an undervote to a vote for Mays in your mind.
If I was a member of that 3-party adjudication board, that's what I would.
Well, that's not, see, I'm talking about voter intent because that's what the statute says, right? That's what case law says is we try to glean the voter intent. So my question is so you think the voter intent there was in favor of that the voter cast a vote for Mays, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
Council. As I go through and look at all the different ovals, to me, that's matching. The mark in that is similar enough to all the other ovals that would be a vote for me.
Okay, thank you. And if you could just go through the next 2. And my question goes to voter intent. It doesn't go to any of these adjudication boards. So just tell me how it was counted originally and how you think it should be counted.
I understand. Okay, so then the next 2 ballots, so the number is 3011 _116 _149.
That's Exhibit 4.
Exhibit 4. Yes, that's correct. So in this situation, this is an early ballot. So all early ballots go to an electronic adjudication board. So when I look at the Attorney General's contest, there is currently, this is showing as an overvote in this contest, right? There's a oval, so filled in for Mays, and then there's an oval filled in on the write-in line, and also then the candidate's name, Mays, then first initial, K is completed. So as guidance issued by the Arizona Secretary of State, their voter intent guidelines, in these situations, we train our electronic adjudication boards to remove the overvote. So to remove that mark that is causing this to be an overvote. And in this situation, the adjudication boards actually adjudicated this to be a vote for a write-in candidate, non-qualified, and then that resulted in this being an overvote, not a vote for Mays.
Okay, thank you. If you could go to the next one, that'd be good.
So it's 03001 _183 _37. That's Exhibit 5.
Correct.
So in this situation, this is somewhat similar to the last one, but there's 2 ovals that we're looking at. The first oval is a vote for Chris Mays. The second oval is what is a partial oval being complete. So here, this looks as if there was a pen rest. So someone rested their pen on that oval, then went in and filled in that vote for Chris Mays. This would then, in my opinion, we would need to remove the overvote. So this could be
You guys,
then
I gotta
a
stop the
vote
streaming for a while.
Chris Mays.
I got a job interview. I'll pick this up later, though. Please like and subscribe. Leave any comments if you can. I appreciate it. Check y'all out later. I'll be back on a little bit later today.